What's up, plant nerds? It's Rachel with Heart-Shaped Leaves, and Casey is joining us once again today. And today we have a very exciting video. Today we are doing a Skype interview with Shane from Gabriella Plants. We discuss the origin of Gabriella Plants, we discuss things like waitlist information and product information for the future. This is going to be a long form discussion, a lot like you would see in podcasts. I don't know if you guys listen to podcasts or whatever. I like JRE. My husband actually listens to a lot of podcasts.
I listen to JRE too.
So don't forget to subscribe and also hit the bell so that you can stay informed about future possible giveaway information.
Is that a hint?
It might be, but if you don't watch the video, you may never know.
I smell foreshadowing. Could be Winston. One of the two.
So I really hope that you guys enjoy this. Like I said, it is a longer video, but I enjoy long form videos. I enjoy putting something in my ear and listening to it. So it's also jam-packed full of information. If you've ever wondered anything about Gabriella Plants or just any kind of small plant production company, pay attention because there's a lot of things that you might not have guessed or known.
Yeah, we took that information and rammed it in there. So without any further ado, let's meet Shane from Gabriella Plants.
Oh, they built that into Skype now.
So we tested it out a couple of times. So what's up?
That's awesome. Not too much. Just got back from watering stuff. Glad to be here and answer any questions you got.
Thank you so much, by the way, for letting us do this Skype call. We really, really appreciate it.
She made a list.
May or may not have made a list. Well, you know.
I understand. I'm the same type of way. I try to. If I can have everything laid out ahead of time, so much easier. Just have it all laid out.
Yeah. I appreciate that, but I don't identify with that. You know what I mean? I'm a real fly by the seat kind of person. You know
that's
what I mean?
Awesome.
So that's why you marry someone that fits your yin and yang, so you can get along well.
Exactly.
How's your family and your wife? Just wanted to check in, make sure everybody's doing good.
Yeah, she's doing great. We've been married. We just celebrated our 2nd year anniversary back the end of September. So still newlywed.
Sweet.
Yeah, and as far as the rest of the family, it's pretty much just a standard poodle. He's carpet gray, and he's our only teenage daughter at the time.
Oh, that's good. We're glad to hear that you guys are doing okay. So we'll go ahead and get started, okay?
Yeah, I got nothing but this evening for you guys.
All right. So I did a lot of reading on your website about, how Gabriella's Plants kind of came to be, how your dad did it for a really long time, and then he went, to do political. He was elected to political office, and then you kind of took over. So I was wanting to know, like, when you were growing up, was working back out in the greenhouses, was that like the most brutal thing that you could have imagined, or was it something that you enjoyed?
Two things about it being, because it was literally in our backyard. I mean, you take half a football field and it's right there. So growing up to that, it definitely never felt like as much of a work shift because it was so close to home. I could go back and forth a lot more. I would say the same rule applies now as applies then, which is summer's brutal and the rest of the time it feels great. Because if it's a cooler day in Florida, mid 50s, it's still going to, because of the greenhouse effect, the sun baking the tops of the roofs, it's going to be a nice 72 in there. So in the wintertime, it was always a fun place to be. In the summertime, not so much. You tried to get it done earlier in the morning when it wasn't so hot.
I mean, so it sounds like you pretty much always you've been a good boy in the sense of you'd get out there and get it done, it sounds like. Our kids would literally drag their bodies like little zombies all the way out there and would make it miserable for everybody.
The plants would be dead.
Yeah, I was trying to find a photo for you guys because there's one big fan that's been in the greenhouse for my entire life, because there's a photo of me standing in front of it as like a 2-year-old, and that thing still runs to this day. So they certainly don't make them like that anymore. Because I think every other fan we've had, we've replaced 3 times just in the last 3 years. I've been there, but that one fan, but those are my earliest memories. And then as I got older, throughout life, I definitely because I was also homeschooled most of my education.
Wow.
So other employees in the greenhouse were also like subject to having to listen to me and my siblings a lot. So in that sense, I enjoyed being out there because I typically knew more than the average new employee, and I had a new friend to talk to. So we always kind of liked that growing up, for sure.
Oh, I could have wore some people out being out there as a kid. My mom said that the only way my tongue would ever stop moving is if someone cut it off, and then it'd probably flop around on the floor for a good 48 hours. So
I understand
totally
that.
Did you attend college for anything plant related, or was it just business related?
It was all business related. I actually technically at this point am a college dropout, believe it or not. Not really.
Me too. Oh, me too. Oh, yes.
I do have intentions of finishing it, but at the time that Dad got elected, I would have had that last spring semester would have been the end of my college, which spring is also the busiest time for plants, especially with the wholesale business, which was far more seasonal than what we're doing now. So I kind of said, well, I'll get to it in summer. I only need 2 classes to graduate, but
crazy.
It would be a bachelor's in business administration and entrepreneurship.
Well.
So
you needed it anyways. You got the knowledge. You cheated them. Does your dad still participate in the greenhouse activities, frivolities, and things like that?
Not very much. He especially for the first year, he was a lot more I wouldn't say instructional, but, would have a lot more to say about what was going on in any, bench and things. As he became more and more tied up with work, though, I pretty much ran it by myself. He is still around because, public offices have the weird, like, days that are closed, Christmas, Easter, one of the bigger holidays. So when they have the weird Columbus Day off, he's around for a day.
Yeah.
And that's always fun, but for the most part, he's not really involved. He was really involved in spring for a while as well, like helping on some of the back end business stuff and then the pesticide stuff. So, but not on a day-to-day, really, not at all at this point.
Since we're a plant couple, we were interested in, do you and your wife work together in the greenhouse, or does she do something completely different?
She has been doing something different. She's been a assistant director for Chick-fil-A here locally. So
Oh, Lord.
Our favorite chicken sandwich.
It's amazing. She's so thin.
And the new mac and cheese, not to get distracted, but the new mac and cheese too. I mean, top stuff.
Oh my gosh, I haven't tried it yet.
Okay.
Well,
you got homework. We've been in talks back and forth, especially when we took some time off for our anniversary, about what it looked like kind of bringing her into it. Right now, our biggest thing has been, and we can talk about it later, I'm sure, with some of the other questions and stuff, but our biggest struggle this entire year has been just space, particular air-conditioned space. Because before, we're still not moved into our new building, but before the new building, we basically had a room this size, maybe double this size, 190 square feet. So, I mean, it's a very small area. But she does really want to become more involved, particularly if and when we launch more brick and mortar or like in-person sales. But I think she's going to come on at some point in the next couple months, at least part-time, and help with some of the customer service email workload.
Absolutely. Everyone's going to think that she's Gabriella.
I know. Well, the ones who don't already think I am, but that's her.
Miriam. No, her name's Miriam.
Who's Gabriella?
That's a great question. Who is Gabriella?
Okay, so Gabriella has kind of a backstory. Where we're located is about 20 minutes outside of Orlando. It used to be a small railroad station at one point, was the area of Jamestown, and Gabriella Lane was one of the main dirt roads that was there. So when my grandparents, so the property that the greenhouse is on, my grandparents purchased when my dad was in elementary school. So every tree there they planted. I mean, the whole thing, the house, everything was, grandma and grandpa. And then it moved on. For a while, we even had a rural route postage. Like we didn't even have a zip code.
We're familiar with that type of stuff. Yeah.
So we're on Gabriella Lane. That's where the name comes from. And the original name, I believe, is Gabriella Grows Gerber Daisies. When my grandpa had a retail store and then also just had like one very small hobby greenhouse to grow some Gerber daisies in.
Right.
And then my dad kind of took the property and started actually adding on more, commercial greenhouses and going that direction. With his life, it turned into Gabriella Growers. And then when we launched the online side, it became Gabriella Plant.
Have you ever had anybody ask? I'm sure you've had a million people ask that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I've actually had people think that I didn't really know what I was doing. Shane didn't know what he was doing because I'm assuming the owner's name was Gabriel or Gabriel or whatever.
Right.
So
you're the minion and Gabriella is the one calling the shots. Yeah.
Right. As long as you're not calling it Gabriella's Plants, because there is
confusing
no
people.
apostrophe S at the end, then
Right.
you're good in my book. I can take Gabriella,
Okay.
Gabriella, that's fine.
Gabriella Plants. What made you decide to make your sales available to the general public? And was that a hard sell to make when you were like talking about making that transition?
Yeah, well, the transition was kind of a very fluke, weird sequence of events to begin. About a decade ago, there was a greenhouse going out of business, which unfortunately it's even more common these days. But there was a greenhouse going out of business at that time. And the owner was close with my dad and called my dad, said, hey, you got to come look at these Pink Princess. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but, I got these really old raggedy stock plants. They look like crap. But if you want to take them, take them. And I think he paid, I won't say what he paid, but it was basically getting rid of stuff is one less thing they got to throw away. So the whole start of the Gabriella Plants online was we had been growing Pink Princess for the last decade and selling them for about double the price of a traditional wholesale like Marble Queen or something like that. So the price was extremely low and they wouldn't sell mainly, I think, just due to mom and pop garden centers not really knowing the name, not really understanding what it was, and why would you pay double the price if the Marble Queens are still selling? It didn't quite make sense for a lot of people. So we had kind of been selling them and honestly had kind of an overstock of them for a while. And at the beginning of 2018, so not this year, but last year, the beginning of 2018, we started noticing more and more brokers that had never asked for them before were asking for them. And before we had known it, we had landed at around June with about a third of the stock plants or the third of the number of total plants that we had before the beginning of the year. And at that point I said, no, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to have to rebuild stock. It's going to take me some time. Give me some time. And, that held people off for a couple months. And then people started, hey, about those Pink Princess, when are you gonna have Pink Princess again? When are you have Pink Princess? And one of those last people finally called me and said, hey, if I got to give you more money to get my hands on them, let me know how I
money,
Yeah, and I mean, again, because our price was already so low, why not add a couple more dollars on it? Doesn't really make a difference. So that kind of led me internally to start thinking maybe there's something here. And for the first time in my entire life, even as a kid, I thought I should just do a quick Google search. Can't hurt anything. I had never Googled a plant before in my life that I could ever recall. And I Googled it, of course, instantly saw, cuttings were $85 a piece up. And I was like, oh, there may be something to this. So I made the
logo. You might want to look into this whole Pink Princess thing really quick.
Yeah, exactly. So I made the logo and the Etsy store in about 30 minutes that followed that. So I mean, like literally, bam, 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 bam. And before I knew it, we didn't market it anywhere. We didn't have any customer base. Just posted on Etsy, and 10 sold out on Etsy just from people searching Pink Princess on Etsy at the time.
No doubt about it.
Then obviously the big anxiety attack was, okay, now how do you ship these through the mail? This isn't, what have I done? So that was last September was when we started the Etsy store. And for a while it was only Pink Princess. As I was kind of unaware growing up in Florida, and you're from the South too. I mean, in general, you can find a pretty good assortment of plants, or at least it feels like it everywhere you look. And I was kind of unaware of, these kind of rural areas, especially out west, where they just don't have access to even things that you and I would say, well, I'll give it to you. So we started adding more and more of what we grew. And then in December, we launched our full website, and that was kind of the official launch into online.
I'm sure that your inbox has just been like full since the beginning, right? I mean, you guys clearly can't manufacture like 6,000 pink princesses and things like that. So I can only imagine like how intense this whole journey has been from the time you launched that website till now.
But we closed our wait list for it in June and been working on people who were kind enough to give us pre-orders. It's kind of a thought to me. I have to be able to close this wait list down for the long term, because I was to the point we had almost 4,000 people on the list. And I just felt really bad. And the way it was working, we were just sending out these emails with a password to, 100 people at a time. And in any 100 batch, we could get 10 people who bought one. We could get 60 people who bought one. I would really have no idea. So if you were number 3,400, my email to you literally said, maybe, like, I don't know how to tell you, like, maybe one day. So I knew I had to stop it at that point. And so we sent out an email and just said, and then my kind of business brain kicked in too. And I was like, we could do two things at once. We could, get people who are really interested in getting one. They don't mind how long they got to wait, especially knowing it's coming from us. We'll go ahead and collect their full pre-order price for the plant. We won't sell any out from under. We won't do anything like that. And we'll get them out as quickly as we can, which let us resolve the wait list and go from 3,800 to roughly 850 people that we actually knew we have to get these out to you. Much more manageable, Much more manageable. And on the other side, that also gave us the cash that we needed. And this was not my intention, but, it gave us the cash we needed to start the building project to be able to expand how many plants we could ship each week. So
absolutely. But we've seen your pink princesses arrive at people's houses. Well, of course, on YouTube. I don't even watch TV. I just watch YouTube. You know what I mean? So very beautiful.
So most of the plants we're trying to keep under 18. If they're really big, the other reason that oftentimes, and this one here, if you, all right, so this is fairly large. I mean,
yes, it's huge. Yes.
But all these lower leaves, at the time that they would have been ready for, shipment, that I would have gotten an email saying this isn't a good one. Please don't send me this. So obviously over time, its latest leaf doesn't have a ton either, but it's
beautiful. I still think that they're beautiful, even with the speckled variegation. You know what I mean? So
everyone wants lots of pink.
They're much happier that way, and that's the sad reality, is that they're so much happier that way. But to me, we have such a high threshold of what we've sent out, big or small. The thing, we tell the people on the wait list there are varying heights because these have to come in batches. I couldn't plant 1,000 at the same time.
They're plants too. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And that was the whole reason that I reached out to you guys, because I was like, yes, thank you. There is somebody who's explaining how this actually works, because obviously we deal with it with Pink Princess, and we deal with it on pretty much every inventory item these days.
Cassidy, do you want to mention how many that you can do at a time? Is that something you want everyone to know about?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty transparent on our behind the scenes Facebook group. So that's been really the core of, I think, giving me a lot of confidence in what I've been doing this entire year, because those have been customers of ours. At one time, the group was 200 people. I think it's 2,000 something now. But I kind of ramble in there about the building progress, the wait list, all that kind of stuff. And the idea to even rectify the wait list in the way that we did, doing pre-orders, was also run by them and had a really good response from that customer base. So I've always been really transparent, but I do have to say my heart goes out for like Steve's Leaves and all the other. I know Enid with NSE deals with the same stuff, because at the end of the day, we can only grow so many, particularly of these rare plants. And I know the variegated monstera is even a worse case, but I was looking at the numbers after when I was thinking of talking with you, and I was looking at it, and our entire production of sellable Pink Princess plants this year, the entire year, is going to be somewhere around 1,100 for the entire year. And there's already roughly 3,000 people who will be notified when we restock it. So I imagine that Steve's Leaves had even more than that when they dropped theirs. And I know that that's going to be an issue that night whenever we do decide to drop 100, because we're going to have 100, and 3,000 people are going to get the email saying, hey, 8 o'clock tonight, you need to be there. And at the end of the day, you can only do 100. And the thing is, I think Enid, Steve's Leaves, and myself would all fit into this category. We're plant lovers. We love what we get to do as growers. So we know that I could easily put a $300, $250 price tag on each one because I only need to sell 100 at $250. I don't have that many, and I'm sure the market's there to clear that many. But we try to bring a better value than that to our customers. And Steve's Leaf, I mean, the price of the elbows, I mean, just think of that. I mean, there's not anything close to that on the internet. So it's going to draw some attention. Yeah. There's going to be some upset people. But in our current packing facility this entire year, since May through present today, our max capacity is shipping 800 plants a week. And then there's capacities of growing specific plants like Pink Princess, where we can produce about 150, 100 every 6 weeks. So, I mean, it's just not a lot of plants that come down the pipeline on those to be able to offer. So it's hard to say that we're not going to have a wait list and that there's no way to guarantee you're going to get one. But at the same time, I don't really want to just raise the price and just go for the money, because I do like being able to provide the plant to people. And I think that's what all of us as growers who are passionate believe, is that, you know, yes, we can make some good money. It does not cost us $60 to make a Pink Princess. It is a lot of labor keeping up with them.
It's a lot of
time. But the plant doesn't cost that much. But, you know, that's the value, and it's way undervalued from what it, you know, goes on eBay. I mean, you guys know.
It's extremely undervalued. Yeah. And I mean, to be honest with you, you know, just as a consumer myself, you know, I've been confused at times. I'm like, wow, you know, like, I wonder, do they know? You know, do they know what it's worth on eBay? But at the same time, I started to realize, actually talking to people who are distributors, that they don't want, their goal is not to price gouge. You know, their goal is for people to get a beautiful plant that they want at an affordable price, you know.
And the reason for that is because growers who are committed long term, and this is not saying anything negative about the sellers. I mean, I in my mind, I kind of sectionalize sellers and growers. They're both doing an amazing work. You know, somebody who owns a shop in a mall selling any other good is still a shop owner. But when you're producing the goods, you know, to me, and I think the other people in discussion here would agree with this, is we're thinking of the long term, you know, and I don't want a customer who bought a Pink Princess from us in 2019 to be considering buying a different plant next year. And then when Pink Princess prices drop one day, and they're like, man, I really got ripped off, that person may not want to buy an otherwise great deal a year later because they feel gouged. So if you're in it for the long haul, you want the customer loyalty more than you want the quick buck off the plant.
Have you considered selling a portion of them on eBay? Because as a buyer of these plants, we try to find them at your site or Steve's Leaves or wherever, and everybody has the same experience. They're all sold out a lot of times. So when they're on eBay, you kind of know you're going to pay more for it, but at least you have a chance to say, I'm willing to pay more because I want this plant.
It's an interesting thought. And I'm sure you saw where Steve's Leaves had put like one online and it went for like
almost $900.
Yeah. So. The goal is to do 5 eBay auctions in the corresponding week leading up to the drop, so that people are aware of kind of the overall value, and that will also help us.
That's a really good plan.
I think that's a great idea, because it lets them see this is what it's like on the open market, and then we're selling them for X, so they know that they're getting a better value, but they still have an opportunity because of the limited supply.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, we haven't really made our mind up on what we're going to shift price-wise, because we honored $50 a plant since last September. A year ago today, we set $50 when I just made an Etsy store and had no idea what I was doing. That was the price that was set then, and it has not changed this entire year. So everybody who did that pre-order got one for $50 plus $10 in shipping, which if you live like west of Louisiana from Florida, we pretty much lose money on the shipping. So
we pay generally $14 for shipping. So
so that we've always kept it low. I don't think it's going to stay quite that low, but I don't have any intentions of making it a $250 plant either. But I think having the context of those other auctions going up to the release, I think will help make people understand the adjustment, whatever we do feel is necessary.
I really wanted to know how you feel about this, though. So just a couple more before we go.
Oh, I'm loving it.
Okay, how do you feel about this phenomenon? How do you feel about just the absolute explosion of the houseplant like community, everywhere everything's going on? People are paying insane amounts of. I mean, you've seen these things, these variegated Adansonii on eBay, and people losing their daggum minds.
Half moon
you know
elbows going for
Oh, yeah.
$1,000.
Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. What do you think about it? What does your dad think about it? Because I'm sure it's blowing his ever-loving mind as well.
Well, I'm pretty sure it was really funny to see his like kind of progression throughout the year. Because of course
Right.
in last September when it was just an Etsy store and it was just me, I'm like, hey, there's these people on these Facebook groups that want plants, and I'm like kind of getting them plants now. And he's like, yeah, well, don't forget about your other customers, because we were wholesale previously. And I that was a good thing for a dad to say. We certainly don't cause any problems, but he definitely didn't believe it for a very long time. I would say,
I can imagine.
I would say, here's how much we made in January, and looking back on it now, it was peanuts, but at the time it was just such an insane, especially for January when plants don't move in the wholesale market. And he was like, well, why isn't the money in the account? And I'm like, well, because we don't have a postage scale, we need more computers, we need to buy an inventory of boxes. There's some other costs here, but as it's gone on, I think he's certainly very proud. But I would say overall, on my thoughts on just the explosion is, I think it's a really, really good thing. But if there's any really interested plant people who are really thinking about making this their life, I was not going to make it my life. When I asked my father-in-law to marry Miriam, he asked, is the greenhouse really going to be able to be something that supports family, and not in a mean way, but just in a genuine way, because I saw my dad my entire life, literally sweat, everything in his existence out to make, sub 40 some years out of an acre of greenhouses, because it just wasn't there at the wholesale level. I think the luck we've had has been because we really care about our customers. So I think that's number one. If you're going to get into it, care, and not just care about your bottom line, but care about the customers and the experience they're having. We have all kinds of things that help with that, like people getting an email when their order is 5 days old and hasn't shipped. Hey, we haven't forgot about your order. Very simple, automated, in fact, but it keeps people in the loop. And I think that that's something people need to realize. And the main thing that I would stress is, if you're super interested in plants and want to make it your career, start growing. Don't rely on selling, because I know this fall there's been a lot of people who have gotten into selling plants, even whether it's opening brick and mortar, opening a pop-up shop, opening an Etsy store, whatever you're doing.
It's going crazy, right?
Spring 2020, it's going to be very hard to find plants. That's how it works. So getting plants throughout late summer when everything's growing in Florida and everyone has everything, it's all well and good. The way you can insulate yourself from that, as well as for profitability, you start growing. Find land that's cheap. It may not be in the town that you prefer to live in. If you live in New York, you probably can't have a greenhouse that's going to grow enough plants. But if you're serious about plants and you're serious about doing that as a long-term career, start growing. There are state departments of agriculture where there are government people's jobs to do nothing but answer those questions for you, or they should. And if they don't, you can ask for a superior. I mean, that is how it works. I know Florida, we're particularly blessed because we're such an ag-friendly state. But that's what those people are there for. They have their own lab, the same lab that takes your soil samples to know if you have nematodes or not, so you can get your nematode inspections. That same guy can probably say, oh, that's a specific bacteria. He may not know the pesticide to spray on it, but he at least knows enough about plant science, or he or she knows enough about plant science to be able to tell you these things. So if you're going to get serious about growing, make sure you're reaching out to your state department of agriculture, exploring those resources, because they do exist.
But that is super smart thinking, is to just go ahead and establish a relationship with that infrastructure, so that when you do come into having problems as a grower, you're not panicking and running for the walls.
And if you ever are going to ship internationally, you're going to have to do it anyways. In order to get a phytosanitary paperwork, you're going to need to have an ag inspector come out and inspect those plants individually and give you that paperwork. So you're going to have to establish that at some point, most likely in your selling, growing career. So go ahead and get in contact with that and start nurturing that relationship as quickly as you can.
Have you thought about expanding into any other type of philodendrons that are any other rare plants other than the Pink Princess?
Thought about, yes. I mean, we grow Pink Princess, we grow Painted Ladies, we grow Silver Swords. Those are probably three of the bigger ones. And then Jose Bueno, which is Impi variegata, and then there's a whole internet dispute as to what you're supposed to properly call that. But they were given to me as Impi variegata. I acknowledge that Impi variegata has not been in cultivation for a long time, which can also mean that they sat under a bench like they did in our greenhouse, and they technically weren't in cultivation, and then we started working on them. So I do have those four. The main thing, though, all winter long, we will be growing a lot of Birkins.
Okay, well that's really hot right now. Birkins are really hot right now, so absolutely, and the philodendrons are just I swear, you could just draw a picture of a philodendron, you know what I mean, and sell it for $20,
That in Monstera.
I'm telling you, everything is just crazy right now. I'm just blown away by it, and I'm a victim as well. You know what I mean? You've watched the videos. I'm a sucker for them. I can't help myself. So I totally get it. And thank God there are people like you out there that are not looking to price gouge, who have ethical business practices, and who, are actually trying, to keep a good relationship with customers.
Yeah.
Good job,
Absolutely.
Shane.
Great job.
Yeah.
As the founder of Gabriella Plants, what do you find to be the most rewarding / frustrating thing that you guys deal with down there?
The most rewarding thing is definitely seeing plants where they end up. And I'll send you a link later to just a long list of all of the customer reviews and photos, so you can scroll through that and show people that.
Yeah.
But that's my biggest thing. And I think it's also my biggest thing, not only because growing up and being wholesale, the semi would back up, you'd load up your wholesale quantity for that 2-week shipment or whatever, and you'd kind of toodaloo, and that was it. You never saw where those ended up. You never knew the price tag that went on them. You never knew the actual experience of the customer at the end. So seeing that entire process and being able to control that entire process, communicating better with customers about delays, communicating that their order is important to them. I think that side of the, interaction with customers has probably been the most rewarding thing. And I also think it's been the most rewarding thing because it's a very tangible thing to show the people who trust in me at work, my employees, my team members, because, the work they do can, packing 800 plants in a week can be very monotonous, can be a lot of the same processes over and over. And the same goes for growing. We're not filling 5 pots and playing with a couple plants. You're filling a bench of 1,000 pots, and that's what you're doing for 6 hours. So I think being able to show them, hey, look, this is just the month of October. Look at all these people whose lives, you change. And the ones that particularly touch me are the I'm just so glad I was able to get this Pink Princess in time. And it wasn't orchestrated this way, but I was able to get this. My mother died of breast cancer last week, and it's been a rough time. And it just so happened that my princess in this week. Those personal moments are definitely probably the things I find most rewarding. As far as challenges, I obviously dealing with the fact that we have so many people that are interested in plants and we have so little. And I think particularly to that, because we've been so regular since the beginning about inventory updates happen every Wednesday. So they're very planned in advance. People have literally alarms on their phones for every single Wednesday. This is what happens.
Yes, they do. Yes.
And I do know that people can get very turned off by that, because if you have been going for a certain plant, and because we can only ship 600 plants that week, guess what? There's only 40 of this plant and 50 of this plant and 40 of this plant. And once they're gone, they're gone. So I think those have been the most frustrating, mainly because I don't like disappointing people. I very rarely get mad at a customer. I genuinely feel for the people who are just trying to get a hold of this plant and they can't, but when you only, when that was all the plants you had, what can you do? Well, if somebody else
nature of the business.
Trust me, we got a good slab and taste of that just recently. So, and I'm a people pleaser 100%. I want everyone in the room to be happy. And when I knew that, no matter what I did, someone was going to be disappointed. And that's a really, really weird feeling, because usually in life you can avoid that. You know what I mean? You can, on a personal basis, you can avoid that. But when you're dealing with so many people, it's like you can't avoid it. And it's definitely a weird, uncomfortable feeling for sure. You know what I mean?
When demand overpowers supply by that degree, it's hard to make everyone happy.
Yeah. And to me, I'm somebody who also, I read every comment, I read every email, I read every, post. So I do try to stay in touch with how everyone's feeling. That's why we've always had the behind the scenes group. I ask a lot of questions and polls and different things about things in there, because some of these things I recognize I'm biased and I have my perspective on life, and, I have my limitations and what I can do. But the way that those events unfold for customers, I want to make that as smooth as I can, while also recognizing, and why I reached out to you in the first place, and I really am thankful I was able to do this with you, is for the education of the customer to know that, hey, the reason variegated Monstera, Pink Princess, all these other variegated plants are hard to find is because growers a decade ago were throwing them in a trash can, because this thing called tissue culture got bigger and bigger and bigger. And these labs could say, hey, take these 4,000 plants, you can plant, half an acre right here. And in 6 months, they're all going to grow at the same uniform height. You're going to have very little problems with pests and disease, compared to having to deal with a plant that could revert, have problems while rooting in. You could hang on to it for 3 months before it's ready, could be 9 months. Even if you were getting double the price tag like we were, is it really worth it compared to how much turnover you can do of these other products? So that's the reason they're rare in the first place, is because growers gave up on them. And I think that the more growers we can have, especially now that growing, and not to get into political sense, but growing is very consolidated now. And I have no hard feelings towards people who are successful in business, but there's 2 companies who grow plants in America that do, close to $1 billion or something in sales. So it really is choking out these little people. And luckily some of us do have the ability to grow some of these more rare plants. And for others, the time's just ticking. There is not a lot of people in my generation coming on. We're 25, 30 minutes away from a Popka, and the average age is 55 to 65 or older. And, their son may run it, but who knows his intention of running it in the future. So, the more, that's why I said earlier, if you can get into a greenhouse, you may have to move away from the city. You may have to go somewhere where it's cheaper. You may have to move to Florida because heating costs are going to be too high in New York to be able to afford to do what you do. But if you're really passionate about that, start growing, because you're only going to learn those mistakes the hard way. You can't avoid losing to root rot. You can't avoid having bugs. It's going to happen. So the sooner you can get that experience into your belt and learn how to deal with it, the brighter future you're going to have. And I think the way that customers support small businesses across the board, not even in plants, think about all the other things. I mean, yes, we buy things from Amazon, but if we can buy that soap at that farmer's market from that person who's really sociable and she really knows her stuff about, local beeswax, that's really important to us. And I think as consumers, that applies to plants as well. And you're only seeing that continue to get, and that's what's going to hold on to the people who can't do $1 billion in sales.
Absolutely.
It's having people who believe in them that much.
Right. And, just so I've got my finger on the old pulse of the plant community, at the moment. And I'll tell you what, you're a big deal. You know what I mean? And everybody loves Gabriella Plants. I mean, I don't think, because I hear everything. I mean, if I put out a video and I open a box from somewhere, I get a load of comments. Well, they did me wrong and they shipped me this and I'm upset and yada, yada. I've never heard a negative thing about your company, and that's a huge accomplishment.
And I guarantee you, whatever comments are put down beneath this video, whenever it releases, that I'll be looking up those names and trying to get into contact with those people to make it right. Because I really do. There was somebody who posted the other day on Facebook in our behind the scenes group that they were just disappointed about this one plant in their most recent order.
Right.
I just instantly looked up their most recent order off their name, refunded it because she posted a picture of what it looked like. Refunded it. Now, obviously, our unboxing guides say, hey, let us know. We'll take care of you. But we understand you don't want to be that customer who wants to email and whatever.
Right.
But if I'm made aware of a situation that I can make right, I'm going to do it. Yeah. And I think that makes us stand out from a lot of growers at this point.
You seem like the kind of guy that likes Captain America. Are you a fan of Marvel or anything like? You don't like comic books or anything?
Never,
like
no.
that?
And you know what? And these are where the real comments are going to start. Never watched Star Wars. Never watched Star Wars. Never watched any Harry Potter movie. Never watched.
You're losing me.
Lord of the Rings. I'm not saying I'm opposed. I'm just saying I just never watched any of those.
What? Okay. No Star Trek.
No Star Trek. No Star Trek.
Star Wars.
No Star Wars.
Okay, so you do like Star Trek.
Well, my dad likes Star Trek, so.
Okay. Well, your dad's a good man. Your dad's a good man.
So you're aware of Star Trek through him.
Yes.
That is so funny. Oh my gosh.
I thought we were gonna have to hang up or something.
I 100%. You guys mentioned earlier you only watch YouTube. That's all I watch. I'm watching YouTube videos. I'm trying to learn as much as I can at all times. If I can learn anything about current events, plants, anything in between, I love learning. And
we're old, so we remember the world before the internet. You know what I mean? When you had to go to the old movie theater and whatnot.
Maybe you can explain how the old wholesale business worked then, where we sat patiently and waited for a fax to come through. Because I can't explain how a fax machine works at all. Beep boop, and then a picture prints out. How does that work, man?
Shame on you. You ought to know how a fax machine works.
It works. It just works poorly and slowly.
Right.
That's so funny. Yeah. Hey, you should look up that video on YouTube that's got millennials trying to use a rotary phone. You would get a real kick out of that, because I'm sure
I do know how to use a rotary phone.
You do know how to use that. I knew you knew how to use that, so you should go check out that. I can use a
fax machine. I know how to use one. I just can't explain to you how a beep boop turns into a phone.
Now that we know that you haven't watched movies, just like Casey, because the only things that he has watched are Marvel related. So if anything 70s, 80s, 90s, if it's current, if you're making a joke about it because it's a callback, he is not going to get it. It's going to go way over that head. He is not in it. So you guys actually have something in common on that front.
So after all this, would you like to do a giveaway with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. Sweet. That sounds really good.
So,
okay.
You think there's any way we could give away a pink princess?
Anything for you guys. Let's do it.
Oh,
sweet. There we go.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So we can't backtrack.
That is so amazing. Okay,
you got it in video evidence. I can't even take it back.
Right. We got
You're
proof.
dang right we do. And don't you try to back out on this. All right, cool.
No, I'd be happy to help.
Okay, well, we're going to release this video where everybody can see where we, had this conversation. And the next one will be teasing to the giveaway and whatnot. And it'll be all good. I really don't know how to close this because I've never done an interview. You're seeing me flailing.
How about we just say thank you for your time. We appreciate what you do. And we're looking forward to the giveaway.
That works really good. I like
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for having me and for listening to me talk and hearing our story. And I think it's been a really fun ride, and I'm excited for what 2020 will bring. And I think you guys are doing a great service in both education to plant lovers, and also just being able to tell some of the backstories of some of these growers too, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people aren't aware of, and that's okay. Absolutely. But you guys are doing a great thing by helping fill that gap and helping provide content in that way.
Well, thank you so much, Shane.
All right. We'll let you go now, and we'll be in touch. Looking forward to the giveaway.
All righty. You guys have a good night, all right?
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Did we just become best friends? Yep.